Sweet. Awesome. Well, it's 10 o'clock. We're time to get rolling. Let's start right on time for our update for quarter 3 here in the Florida and North Florida markets that we're adding. So I'm very excited to get going. We've had a really interesting quarter, a lot of movement and interest rates, so making things exciting. First off is going to be what's going on at 100 units. This is our numbers. So we are very excited. We've had our record-breaking year, very excited about it. Significant improvement over last year, which was our previous record. So very excited about that. And we've also got one of the more interesting things is we're going to see the dichotomy between number of deals that we're closing versus the market, which is an interesting situation that I hadn't anticipated. I haven't figured out exactly why, but we are outperforming the market as a whole. So I'm pretty excited about that because that is a reflection of our team, who's been executing very well and doing a great job. I want to thank Nikki. She's doing an awesome job. She put most of these slides together, really appreciate it. And Mason, we're going to introduce him in a minute, and he's going to be handling the Polk County market for us. New member of the team just started is Ulysses. He will be running transactions for us. So you're going to start seeing emails as you're doing deals. He's going to be sending out, helping us with transactions and upcoming monthly events. When we're doing these are the dates and the topics. So if you want to check out those, will be coming up in the future. Now, and I want to thank Stacy last of all, because she helped us post all this stuff on social media. So all those social media posts, that's all Stacy, and I really appreciate it. The Central Florida market. So this is the home base for me. So it's the one I play around in the most and am the most familiar with. If y'all have any questions at all, put them in the chat. Nikki will be monitoring that to make sure that we can answer any questions and get any updates that need to be, any questions you have. So this is a rundown really quickly of the Central Florida market. This is the one I'm most familiar with and the most of our deals are within. One of the things that really jumps out in Q3 is the differential between the number of transactions closed in 2022 versus 2021. There was a 50% decline in the number of transactions actually closed. And that was something that you would have expected there to be some drop off because interest rates have obviously gone up significantly over this past 2 quarters. I didn't expect it to quite be this much. And one of the big reasons for that is at 100 units, the deals we're doing, we're actually beating last year's Q3. And so our experience was at a dichotomy to the market. And I don't for sure exactly know why that situation is, that we're maybe it's the type of transactions that we're running within or whatever it is, but our experience is we're actually doing more deals right now, but the market as a whole is down significantly in Q3. As far as number of transactions, as far as dollar per door, the price per unit on average for Q3 is 133, which is down from almost 100, high 140s in Q1. So we're seeing some price drop off. Some of that also has to do with the exact deals that were getting done. Some of the deals that were executed in Q2 were higher quality, better locations. Some of the ones in Q3 were more C-class assets. So it's kind of reflected in that average. One thing that is really helping a ton in our world in Central Florida is the rent growth. So rent growth, we're seeing an average 9.4%, which is down compared with previous rent growth of over 23% from last year. But that is following. So it's one of these, you have to look at the accumulation. So last year was over 23%. Currently, year over year rent growth is just under 10% right now, but that's following 23% from the previous year. So there is rent growth attenuation, but it's following significant rent growth that we just experienced. So it's continuing to rise. One of the big drivers in Central Florida is the job market, which is continuing to go up at 6%, which is a tremendous job growth. Now that compared with the previous Q2 job growth of 9% is down, but it's still very positive and still one of the top job growth markets in the United States. So if you look across the entire United States, this is one of the top job growth markets. One of those things that's really benefiting from that is the population growth. So 1.3% population growth versus in Q2, we had 1.1%. So it was a 16% increase in the number of people actually moving into the Central Florida markets, which is one of the more, to me, a very interesting thing, because that's what drives multifamily properties. So what drives rent growth is always the population growth. And to see that continuing to go up in the market, to me, is a very good sign for the situation that we happen to be in and Central Florida as a whole. One of the things that has happened, so if we look at rent, the average asking rent and average effective rent, it has actually come down. If you notice right at the end of that graph, there's a little down tick in the effective rent and asking rent. So in Q2, average asking rent was $1,810, average effective rent was $1,801. This quarter, average asking rent is $1,788 and average effective rent is $1,777. So we've seen a slight pullback in both effective rent and asking rent across the market. Now, one of the important things is to look at that compared to the nation as a whole. So it's still higher than nation as a whole, which is running at $1,635 for asking rents across the United States. But it is come down from the previous highs. That is a quick rundown on Central Florida and what's happening there. Mason, are you ready to give a quick update on Polk County?
I sure am, Joe. That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, so I'm gonna dive in a little bit more specifically just into Polk County and compare quarter 3 2021 versus quarter 3 2022. In 2021, there were 4 transactions that took place versus this year there was only 2 transactions. So not a lot of velocity in the Polk County market in both quarters, but you know, 50% drop off there. And then so average sale price in, you know, I'm gonna do this Q3 2021 versus Q3 2022. So 2021 it was 106 a door versus now it's 90 a door. And then price per square foot is, as they actually stayed pretty comparable. And 2021 it was 115 dollars per square foot for those transactions, and then this quarter it was 113 dollars per square foot. Something noticeable, you know, like Joe was mentioning with the significant rent growth in 2021, there's still continuing, you know, it's rents, average rents are up 6.1% year over year, you know, and even after the significant growth through 2021. You know, for your 1 bedrooms, you're looking in a range between $950 to $1,100. You know, and that I wanted to give a range in order to hopefully, you know, play a part into the different assets and quality of properties. You know, there is some range in there. And then 2 1s, you're looking at $1,150 or $1,150 to $1,350. What we've seen, and then the 3 bedrooms, you're looking at $1,550 up to $1,800 in Polk County. But then one thing I did want to highlight for development growth is there's over 4,000 units being delivered or under construction, I should say, in Polk County, and thankfully about 25% of those are low-rise garden apartments. So, you know, still growing here in Polk County. So hopefully those you know, transaction velocity will increase, and we'll see continuing growth here in the market.
It's exciting. Awesome. Thanks, Mason. Appreciate the quick rundown on Polk County. We're going to head north to the Jacksonville markets. So we got Sean covering the Jacksonville markets. Of course, she couldn't make it right now. So I'm going to go ahead and run through the transactions we've seen this one slightly, again, attenuation in the number of transactions closed in Q3 versus 2021. They had 8 versus 13. It's a little slower market in Jacksonville. What's interesting is we ran through the numbers, and Jacksonville has slightly higher price per unit on average than Orlando, which totally shocked me. I did not anticipate seeing those numbers at all. And that just happened. That's what it came out to in Q3. Those transactions did happen to include 2 extremely high price per unit deals that transacted in some absolutely stunning locations in Jacksonville that kind of skewed the numbers higher than what we would have normally anticipated. For rent growth, job growth, and population growth, all of which are positive across the markets, which is just about everywhere in Florida. For population growth, it was just under 1% at 9.94%, which is down slightly from Q2 at 1.3%. And we had job growth of 4.3%, slightly down from the 5% of Q2, and rent growth, which is at 4.5%. This is one of the lowers in one of the lower rent growths that we're seeing, but that's down following Q2 of 12.1%. Again, following the same pattern as Central Florida, where we had a slight dip in Q3 for rent growth in this marketplace, which is similar to what we're seeing in Central Florida and across the Florida markets. So rent growth, when you're looking at rents in Jacksonville, it's important to know the difference between where Jacksonville stands in the versus the nation as a whole. So Jacksonville average asking rents is $14.95 and average effective rent is $14.81. Now that is down slightly from $15.11 and $15.03 in Q2, and is give or take 8% lower than the national average of $16.35. So the Jacksonville market is something to be important to be cognizant of as you're venturing into the North Florida markets, is the rents are slightly less than the Central Florida markets as a whole. So it's something to keep in mind as you're investing in those markets to make sure that you're getting the return you anticipate, because the average market rents are just slightly less than what you're seeing in Central Florida. We're going to roll into the Tampa Bay markets, head across I-4, head to the West Coast. This is typically has significantly more activity than Central Florida, but we're seeing the same kind of situation where Q3, the number of deals closed is down about 50% from what we saw last year. Like this one is down, which is really surprising to me. It is down from almost 100 transactions to 25. And it's following Q2 where there was 58 transactions and now there's only 25. So we're seeing the same kind of attenuation in the number of deals getting executed. Also the price per unit, which I believe followed the same kind of pattern as Central Florida, where we saw a few more deals in the C-class markets transacting during this time and brought the price per unit down to just over 100, just about 135 per door, which again is surprising because it's slightly less than Jacksonville and about the same as Orlando. And over the past several years, we've typically seen Tampa Bay properties trading at a premium to the ones in Central Florida. And it's interesting to see them almost being the same right now. And that is something that I was surprised at. Again, we've got plenty of positive numbers as far as rent growth, job growth, and population growth, which is very important for driving multifamily asset values and the operations of multifamilies. It's one of those things. We were in Chicago, we talked to some people, and you can make a number of errors in operating a multifamily property. And if you have population growth, job growth, and rent growth, it makes up for a lot of mistakes you can make. If you're in a declining market where there's negative population growth, negative job growth, and negative rent growth, you do not have much room for error as an operator. And that was one of the interesting things. I was talking to some people in Chicago about operations, and there is not a lot of room for error. when you have those market situations that you are competing with. The 15% rent growth in the Tampa Bay markets is one of the ones I was very surprised at, that it held up so well compared with Q2, which was at 14%, so it's actually outperforming. This would have been the only market in the central North Florida markets that had double-digit rent growth continuing. If you look at the average asking rents, you're at $1,760 and average effective rents at $1,747. Again, that's a 8-9% premium to the United States as a whole at $1,635. So people are paying more to live in Tampa Bay. What is, to me, is very interesting is typically you're seeing Tampa Bay properties trade at a slight premium to Central Florida properties, but the rents, if you notice, these rents are at $1,760 versus almost $1,790 for Central Florida. So as far as a gross rent multiplier, if you're looking at those kind of metrics, which is ones I track, the Central Florida markets is a better value, a better bang for your buck when you're purchasing properties currently. So it's something that has continued throughout the times we've been tracking these markets for several years, and it's something that has continued. This right here is financing for multifamily assets, and this is what has really played such a big impact on watching the number of transactions slow down. Typically, it's about 50% in Q3, and this is the main reason. Is if you're looking at the interest rates, the LTVs, all of which lenders are getting more conservative, the interest rates are rising, and we're seeing that across the board, regardless of bridge, agency, bank, life companies, whatever kind of lending you're looking at, they are pulling back on loan to value. Typically, what they're doing is not changing their loan to value on their term sheets. Typically, what they're doing is adjusting their underwriting for how they're reaching their NOI for their debt service coverage ratio requirement. I haven't seen them actually go back and change term sheets where they say 75% LTV and they'll say whatever 1.3 debt service coverage ratio, but they're tightening up their underwriting standards. They're pushing their reassessment of taxes. They're pushing what their anticipation of insurance costs are going to be. They're pushing their reserves. But what that effectively does for buyers in the marketplace is they are reducing the loan to value that they are giving. And that's something to be cognizant of as you're out purchasing property, because you're going to be bringing a little more cash to the table than you would have in the past. And it's something to be very aware of. The last thing you want to do is be heading to the closing table and have a surprise and you're short cash. That makes things very difficult, and it's not a surprise that you want to have. This is something important to me because I'm right here in Orange County, and this is on the ballot. We are actually the guinea pig across the Florida markets for rent stabilization or rent control. It is being actively pushed in the Tampa Bay markets, in St. Pete, and also in Jacksonville and in South Florida right now. They are actively pushing this. We just happen to be the first market that this actually got onto a ballot. And it's important for everyone to know, if you're owner operator in the Orange County market, this is something that's on the ballot. And I don't know if you have gotten if y'all can see these, this is the flyers. So this is what I've gotten. Every single one of these was paid for by the Realtors Association and the Florida Apartment Association. Every single one. I haven't had a single flyer saying coming out for rent control. Every single one of these was supported by the Realtors Association and the Florida Apartment Association. They are doing a phenomenal job to combat the rent stabilization ordinance in Orange County. And so that's actually something that I've personally written checks that help them out because they're obviously nonprofit organizations. And there's a number of things to be cognizant of. One is that most people's anticipation is that on the ballot, this will actually pass. There's a high probability this will pass on the ballot and be voted in. The reason they're spending all this money on these flyers is they plan to immediately appeal them as being unconstitutional, start fighting Orange County in the courts. And then they've already had conversations with a number of members in the state legislature to tighten up the current state constitution requirements for any kind of rent control. And obviously, if this passes by a very wide margin, where there's tons of community support, it's going to be very difficult to get the state to put in tighter rent restrictions into state constitution. If this barely squeaks by, which is what our anticipation is and what they're hoping to accomplish by sending all these flyers, it's much easier then to get the state legislature to actually amend the state constitution to make it much harder for rent control acts to even get on the ballot. So it's something to be very aware of. And these two organizations are doing an excellent job pushing out the dangers of rent control and why that has a negative effect on affordable housing. And for me personally, I actually went out and spoke with them. They are doing a very good job of getting the right kind of information out to the public at large, versus just hearing emotional pleas of people having their rents raised, which is absolutely true. People are having their rents raised across the board. But if we continue to have significant population growth and we have limited supply being added, it's very difficult for that not to also drive up prices, which can be a very good thing for apartment owners as a whole. We are here to help. So if you are an apartment owner and you need some assistance with virtual tours of your properties, these are very helpful when you're out renting units, floor plans, marketing, photography, drone photography. If you're in the process of considering selling your asset, there's a partnership disagreement, you need evaluation, you're considering what to do with your next property. If you're planning to refinance, pull some cash out, we can assist with all of those things, and we're happy to do so. I would highly recommend, if you're in the process and you're like, well, I don't want to bother anybody at 100 units because we're doing a refinance, we've been doing this for well over a decade. We are well entrenched with quite a few of the appraisers, and we're happy to put together a nice package, putting together an analysis of your property to help the appraiser, because it can have a big impact. One way or the other, the appraiser ends up calling us anyway when they're doing their comps to check on it, and they talk, hey, oh, I see you sold this building, what do you think of this one? I'm doing the appraisal on. If we know ahead of time, we can add a ton of value by helping them, be giving you a package. Boom, here's the comps that are going to help get the value you want. Here's the rent analysis of it. Here's the rent comps we're already using. And we're happy to put that together. Nikki, Stacy, Ulysses, they can all knock out those packages relatively quickly. So if you're in that kind of process, we're happy to help to get the best value you can if you're doing a refinance. Coming up in November, we'll be talking about 1031 exchanges. In December, we'll be preparing your property for sale or a refinance situation. And then January, we're going to be doing the 2022 year in review. I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's always awesome to see you. And I hope you got tons of value from our quarter three update on the multifamily market across the Central and North Florida market. So I really appreciate y'all coming out. And if y'all have any questions, we're happy to help. But our goal with these is to provide value where you're getting information. It's in the space we play in, it's difficult to be fully informed. And so we are doing these transactions on a regular basis. We're seeing what's happening in the market. So we hope that this is helpful for you and you're able to use the information we have to make the best investment decisions possible. And we're happy to help going forward. So I really appreciate y'all all coming out. Nikki, thank you very much for all your help doing this. Mason, thanks for giving us the update on Polk County. And thanks to Stacy for making sure all our social media is handled. Really appreciate it. So thanks. Y'all have a great one. Go out and invest wisely.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Have a good one.
Good. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It's great.